The FBI director allegedly having to have a SWAT team break down his door because he drank himself unconscious. The U.S. just broke its own ceasefire. 2 more officials are out at the White House. And Trump's approval rating is sitting at 31%. And it's only Tuesday. It's April 21st. I'm Grant Hermes, and we've got a lot to get through. It's Make It Make Sense. Over the weekend, Donald Trump was telling reporters, he was telling donors, he was posting about it on social media, he was telling pretty much anybody who would listen that Iran had agreed to everything, every single one of the U.S. demands to end the war. No more funding proxy groups, permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz without collecting tolls, agreeing to not make a nuclear weapon ever, and not enriching uranium for the next 20 years, that they would allow the U.S. to come in and collect the nearly 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium they still have, and that we wouldn't give them anything in return. Here's how he talked about the nuclear material at a Turning Point USA event in Arizona.
Go very quickly, that most of the points are already negotiated and agreed to. You'll be very happy. The USA will get all nuclear dust. You know what the nuclear dust is? That was that white powdery substance created by our B-2 bombers, those great B-2 bombers, late one evening, 7 months ago. No money will exchange hands in any way, shape, or form.
So, apart from it sounding like the B-2 bombers were dropping cocaine on Iran, what Trump is actually talking about there is this entirely made-up idea that last June, when the U.S. dropped bombs on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities, they were reduced to nuclear dust. Now, I don't know why Trump insists on calling it white dust. I'm assuming it's because the videos they show him of the missile strikes are in black and white, and the explosions show up in white. But regardless, that's not what happened last summer, because we know that Iran was able to move a significant amount of that uranium from those sites before our bombing run, that the uranium that was left was recoverable, and as recently as January, there was active rebuilding on those sites. So to say that they were ever reduced to dust that we would need to go collect with some kind of anti-Chernobyl Dyson is just wrong. Then Trump posted through the weekend hundreds of times on social media. At one point, he was posting about once a minute per hour, including conflicting messages about the Strait of Hormuz, which was not open at any point over the weekend, not by a long shot, reposting conspiracy theories about the 2016 and 2020 elections and the Mueller investigation from 2018, a post that said he was the best grandpa and the best political athlete, whatever that means, a letter from disgraced Reverend Franklin Graham, the stepping down of the head of the board of Netflix, and a bizarre video of Frank Sinatra very creepily singing My Way, you know, the song that starts with, "And now the end is near." His posting was so erratic that a fake post of an AI video of Trump doing some kind of blood ritual went viral because people thought it was real. And given everything else, it didn't seem out of the realm of possibility. That's where we're at. And then on Saturday, we got an incredible piece of reporting from the Wall Street Journal about Trump grappling with his own fears about the war in Iran behind closed doors at the White House. What they said was, a president who thrives on drama is bringing an even more intense version of his unorthodox, maximalist approach to a new situation, fighting a war. He is veering between belligerent and conciliatory approaches and grappling behind the scenes with just how badly things could go wrong. Well, we also learned that sometimes Trump's erratic posts have been part of a plan, just not one that anyone except for Trump in that moment seems to know. His posts on Easter, the one where he told Iranians to open the fucking strait and then ended by saying praise be to Allah, no, that was his idea. And he later asked his aides how it was playing. And then the genocidal post to wipe out Iranian civilization, also his. The post was improvisational and not part of a national security plan, an official told the Wall Street Journal. He has apparently marveled at Iran's ability to close the Strait of Hormuz, which he was told by the Israelis, and apparently the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth that they wouldn't do, even though every single U.S. military and intelligence assessment for the last half century has said it's the first thing that Iran would do. And then in the last few weeks, Trump has taken to fielding calls from reporters on his personal cell phone or calling them directly. Well, that's been causing chaos because he's been giving those reporters conflicting information, which has put the peace talks with Iran in jeopardy because nobody knows where the U.S. really stands, and not in a strategic way, like a you can't argue with the guy yelling at the empty seat on the bus kind of way. Now, those calls have been rattling the administration so much that aides have taken turns telling Trump to stop making and taking them. They have to take turns because Trump will just fire the person who scolds him consistently, so it has to be different people. Now, apparently, he's not even looping in his own press secretary about his interactions with the press, telling Caroline Leavitt that he's broken news to a reporter, but she'd have to wait and see who it was and what he said. So just awesome message control from the White House in the middle of a war where their approval ratings, Trump specifically, are now at 31% as of today, and they're just months out from what looks to be a bloodbath of a midterm for their party. Now, the Journal did say that Trump is behaving this way because he's afraid and desperately looking for a way to end the war. And while he grapples with the idea of sending troops to fight, which might still end up having to happen here to end this way, the thing that Trump wants, it's not that he's grappling over the idea that he may have made a mistake in entering into this war or that he might have to put Americans in harm's way, but what this whole thing could mean for his legacy. The opening story of this article is that all Trump can see right now is that he looks and feels like Jimmy Carter. A mess involving Iran, an oil and gas crisis, a nation upset with its president and pessimistic about the future. That seems a lot like the 1970s. And so Trump is trying anything and everything he can to end the war because what he'd rather be doing is what the administration officials said, which was the president sometimes loses focus, spending time on the details of his plans for the White House ballroom or on midterm fundraisers, and telling advisors that he wants to shift to other topics. Now, Trump will take multiple meetings a day on the ballroom, of which he thinks of himself as this general contractor-in-chief. Though as of late last week, construction on the actual ballroom part was blocked by a judge, although the judge is letting the bunker underneath the ballroom to continue to be built. Now, we only know that there's a bunker there because Trump keeps telling us about it, and then he told us in detail on Truth Social that it was a top-secret military and medical facility able to withstand drone and missile strikes, which may have given away secret information. Anyway, on Sunday, the U.S. broke the ceasefire with Iran. U.S. Central Command, the military command in charge of the war, posted 2 videos. The first was a video of a U.S. Navy destroyer firing on an Iranian commercial ship, before the second video showing Marines boarding that ship just to take a look around. That ship was attempting to breach the blockade the U.S. is currently running on the Strait of Hormuz, while Iran is also doing the same thing on just their side of it. Now, in response, the head of Iran's judiciary said, "The United States blockade of Iran's ports and coasts, as well as its attack on our commercial ship, violates the ceasefire and constitutes a war crime, and we will certainly respond to these measures." We don't know what Iran would do when it comes to responding, but we do know that they have pretty sophisticated cyber attacking capabilities, which they've already been using, and we know that U.S. cyber defenses have been weakened since Trump took office, so that's not a bad place to look first. Trump then accused Iran of violating the ceasefire multiple times, though he didn't cite any actual instances, neither did any administration officials. Iran has fired warning shots at other ships that don't have U.S. flags on them. One of them was an Indian oil tanker, but so far Iran has not opened fire on any American ships. So the question here also is the blockade a war crime? Maybe. Naval blockades are considered war crimes under the Geneva Convention, which both Iran and the U.S. have signed, so both countries are in the wrong here. But Iran, like I said, hasn't fired on a U.S. ship, and what the U.S. Navy did was certainly an escalation and something that was away from the ceasefire. Now, today, J.D. Vance and a U.S. delegation were meant to go to Pakistan to continue peace talks with Iran before the ceasefire on paper officially ends tomorrow. But that trip has been postponed and not canceled outright, but they are talking about it. And Iran hasn't agreed to return to the table, The spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry said, quote, "So far, no decision has been made, and I think the reason is very clear because of the confusing messages we've been receiving from the United States." Those are the Trump posts, right? And as I'm recording, J.D. Vance is still in D.C. and was seen heading into the White House for what looked like a national security meeting with Marco Rubio and the president. So with the clock ticking on returning to all-out war, I guess we'll have to see what happens next. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, more resignations from the Trump administration, and another one could be right around the corner. Today's episode is brought to you by Ground News, which is something that I wish was around when I first started getting interested in and covering politics. I know it seems like common sense now, but it's really hard to sift through all the news that is out there because the same story can be completely different depending on who and where you're reading it from. That's where Ground News comes in. They give you all the versions of the story right in your feed, left, right, and center. They show you those side by side so you can see how the framing changes and you can get a full view of the story. They also have a Blindspot feed that flags stories that are being ignored by one side of the aisle entirely. In a media landscape built to keep you in an echo chamber, Ground News shows you the way out. And right now you can use the link in the description for 40% off. It is their best deal on their best plan. That's the Vantage plan right now. You can only get it from Make It Make Sense. Get access to their Blindspot feed, more than 50,000 unique outlets for news, and one of my favorite features is their Burst Your Bubble newsletter, which helps you break out of that echo chamber and shows you your own media bias for all the things that you consume. I think it is an invaluable resource to expose you to different ideas and help keep your own media diet healthy, because a healthy media diet is just as important as a regular diet. Again, use the exclusive code in the description to get 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan, their absolute best plan right now. In 2025, the Trump administration had a policy: no scalps. It was about no high-profile firings, no resignations, no major palace intrigue scandals that force someone to leave. And they were able to keep to those things. But 2026, that's out the window. Kristi Noem at DHS, Pam Bondi as Attorney General, Greg Bovino as Commander of ICE, and then as of this weekend, the Director of ICE, Todd Lyons, is resigning at the end of next month amid criticism stemming from ICE officers abusing citizens and non-citizens alike, killing Americans in streets of American cities, and a record number of deaths in ICE detention centers. To put this in perspective, for fiscal year 2026, 29 people died while in ICE's care, which is more than one person a week. And for reference, in all of last year, 21 people died in ICE custody, and this year alone would account for nearly 2/3 of all the ICE deaths in Trump's entire first term. And then we got the news yesterday that Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez-DeRemer was resigning. She resigned amid some pretty big scandals involving alleged sexual harassment and assault allegations levied against her husband and her father. Those allegations came from staffers and got her husband banned from the Labor Department building in D.C. She is also being accused of having an affair with a member of her security detail, using staffers to plan personal vacations, and taking at least one staffer to a strip club, as well as being drunk on the job. Now, she denies all these allegations, but we are expecting an Inspector General report into her conduct to drop any day now. And then we've got FBI Director Kash Patel. Now, he's not out. Not yet, at least. Over the weekend, The Atlantic dropped a major article where more than 24 FBI sources said Patel was frequently drunk on the job. He spends his weekends in Las Vegas, not in D.C. He drinks to obvious public intoxication. He's frequently gotten so drunk, the FBI has had to move his meetings to later in the day so he could sleep it off. And on multiple occasions, he's drank so much that FBI staff has had trouble waking him, including one time in which breaching equipment, which are things like crowbars and battering rams used by SWAT teams, had to be requested to break down the door to his room because aides couldn't get a hold of the head of the FBI, who again had gotten too drunk to be roused. At this point, his colleagues are worried that his drinking is a national security threat. The article also describes Patel as somebody who is constantly paranoid about losing his job, including one time where he got locked out of his work computer and thought that he'd been fired and not been told. Now, to be fair, that is how Trump does things. Trump will just announce it on social media without telling somebody. It's what happened to Kristi Noem. But also, the people Patel works with said that he is erratic, suspicious of others, and prone to jumping to conclusions, which are just the exact qualities you want in the guy running the FBI, right? The FBI director oversees nearly 40,000 FBI agents. It's a 24/7 job, and these allegations are serious. Kash Patel, however, is now suing The Atlantic for $250 million for defamation. Here's how he announced it.
You want to attack my character? Come at me. Bring it on. I'll see you in court.
So you're going to sue them?
Absolutely. It's coming tomorrow.
Tomorrow you will be dropping a lawsuit against The Atlantic magazine.
Yes, I will, for defamation. And because you know what, Maria? We have to fight back against the fake news. It's one of the many.
So that was Director Patel on Fox News this weekend. And I'm not saying he was definitely hungover, but as a person who has been himself in his life on occasion hungover, I would know that brain fog delayed speech anywhere. And either way, for Patel to win this defamation case, he would need to prove that the Atlantic reporter sourced more than 24 people within the FBI, did the background reporting and vetting, didn't believe any of it, and then, out of hatred for Patel, ran these things regardless. It's a bananas lawsuit. And in this lawsuit, Patel says that no one has ever had concerns about his behavior across the government. That just simply cannot be true. This is a guy who ran with bad evidence in the Charlie Kirk shooting, saying the suspect was in custody when they weren't. He released what appeared to be doctored text messages in that same case. His own aides have talked about how he was more concerned with when he was going to get to go sightseeing and use the hotel gym during an international intelligence conference with our closest allies instead of, the intelligence stuff. And then, of course, using taxpayer dollars to fly across the country to watch his D-list country singer girlfriend perform, and then using that same money to chug beers with the USA hockey team in Italy this last winter. And no one's got a concern about cash? That just doesn't seem right. The story also has Patel running scared because the same day he said he was suing, he said the FBI was about to make arrests in the 2020 election cases.
And that is not something that is going to stop on it. That is not something I'm going to allow on my watch. Right. But you just have to remember, they built this disease temple over 20 and 30 years. We've got all the evidence. I can announce on your show that we've got all the information we need. We're working with our prosecutors at the Department of Justice and their Attorney General Todd Blanche. And we are going to be making arrests. And it's coming. And I promise you, it's coming soon.
So there just isn't information out there to prove the 2020 election was rigged, because it doesn't exist. More than 60 court cases proved that. The FBI in 2020, Trump's attorney general, and his head of cybersecurity all said the 2020 election was not rigged. Patel is just saying things that Trump wants to hear so he doesn't fire him. And it might not be enough. Kash Patel was a low-level DOJ lawyer that got pushed out of the department and had an axe to grind. And he found a home in the right-wing grift machine, started podcasting, said a lot of pretty wild stuff, and then wrote some fawning children's books about Donald Trump and got into Trump's good graces. But Trump is also famously a teetotaler. He doesn't drink and he doesn't care for people who get drunk publicly. He also doesn't like it when people steal his headlines, and what this is stealing headlines for all the wrong reasons to boot for yet another time for Kash Patel. The only thing that might save Patel here is that there aren't a lot of people to step into this role. CNN is reporting today, as I'm recording, that Trump still hasn't made a decision to replace Pam Bondi as Attorney General, partly because the Department of Justice has been emptied out, with one official saying the work they've been hoping to do means, quote, you need people who are MAGA and who are really competent, implying those two are often mutually exclusive. Still, Trump could decide Patel is too big of a liability and show him the door, leaving the FBI even more adrift without a leader as we likely head back into a hot war with Iran as the country promises to retaliate potentially here on U.S. soil. So that's where things stand today. A ceasefire hanging by a thread, a war the president is desperately trying to escape, and an administration that keeps losing people faster than it can replace them. This episode helped you understand what's actually going on. Hit subscribe and share with somebody who needs it. The Things You Forgot from Civics Class Substack is out now, and how primaries actually work. And with primary season just 2 weeks away, this one matters. The link is in the description. I'm Grant Hermes. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.